You're listening to the Unfucking Work podcast for people professionals, leaders, business owners, and anyone wanting to start their own mutiny and unfuck the workplace. A Work Pirates production with your hosts James Eves and Michelle Minikin. Could have just laughed at the beginning.
It's like so awkward.
I will try to make it awkward. So I'm going to read out the first bit. So today's guest, Michelle, Sakshi Bansal, who is the world's first UNESCO Kindness Leader, which sounds very cool. She's the founder of Project Leap, a social service project that she established at the age of 17. And as an occupational scientist, she has made efforts to essentially unfuck work one LinkedIn post at a time.
You said scientist, not psychologist.
Did I say scientist?
You did. It's fine. We're a scientist as well.
An occupational scientist. That sounds like a really cool profession.
I know.
I think occupational scientist is I think I'm going to update my LinkedIn now.
Yeah, I would as well.
Not an occupational Scientologist. That would be even worse.
Yeah. Let's not go there.
Okay, so I got that bit wrong, but that's fine. We're just keeping that in, aren't we?
I was thinking, should we restart again? I was like, nah, let's keep going. So welcome, Sakshi. It's so lovely to see you again. And thanks for agreeing to come on and talk to us for the second time.
Yes.
So we're going to be talking about kindness as a strategy. Tell me more.
Well, two good words attached together. And I know they generate a lot of curiosity usually, right? Like, what the hell is kindness and why are we suddenly talking about it? And then strategy has always had that nice allure around it. Strategy, and you sound cool and what are you doing? And I thought, why don't we combine it together? Not just for the sake of it, there's a reason behind it. But why don't we combine it together and see what comes of it? So I think what I want to say when I say kindness is not just going by the definitions we think we know, or not putting kindness in a box. So generally, people will attach words like benevolence, sympathy, compassion with kindness. And my challenge is almost to say, one, do you need to define kindness? Do we need to put it in a box only for our researchers and our sort of linear thinking brains to say, here's a definition, here's a hypothesis, let's research it. And then my second challenge is, what are the burdens around kindness? Because every time somebody has talked about something like kindness or authenticity or vulnerability at work, it has always become fuzzy, because people don't realize there are emotions attached to these things. And as much as we want them in the workplace, we need to unburden them a little bit. So it doesn't mean that if I'm a kindness leader of UNESCO, that I'm 24/7 a kind person. It's just not possible, right? And that's not what the expectation should be from anybody who says I'm kind or I'm authentic. And I guess my third challenge is, well, can we attach words like power, productivity, profits to kindness and not just sympathy and benevolence? So these are the three challenges of kindness and strategy that I bring when I say those two words.
Yeah, because it is a clash, isn't it? You can see it. The next strategic meeting in a company, right? The word for the next financial year is kindness. You can almost just hear the eye rolls, can't you? But I really like the idea that it has a definition that's preconditioned, isn't it, in everyone's mind? But we have options to turn that into something that you can define in different ways, measure in different ways. So I do like that. What would you suggest then are some of those things that companies could look at, try out?
Yeah. I think before companies look at anything, I think the challenge that I have or we have as psychologists is to look deeper into what it means. And again, without trying to define it, because I think we are preconditioned to define everything and put everything in like an action box or bullet points. I think the idea is to understand what it is not, because one, that is easier to point out and work with. And two, it transcends words and it transcends sort of a string of paragraph put together. So you can easily point out what kind behavior is not and what stories you're not trying to amplify in your organization. So I think that is a challenge. I think the other challenge, and what I'm working on currently, is linking social psychology as a whole to some of those strategies that organizations are adopting. So one of those is ESG, right? So a lot of people are talking about ESG now. It's the buzzword, and just like sustainability, it has been slapped everywhere, even without people understanding what it really is. So ESG itself is in such an embryonic stage. I wouldn't say embryonic. I think there are experts out there. I think there are people out there who have been working on it for some time, but even they say that this is not a fully developed field and that we still need to work on what it exactly means, and we still need to set international standards.
What does it stand for those who don't know?
So environmental, social, and governance. It's basically a framework or a model that investors are using to now look at companies they will invest in that have some social impact but are also making money. So it's basically asking organizations to do better because stakeholders have realized and investors have realized that people won't buy from companies who are not doing better. And so they will invest in companies who are doing better. So it's something that I feel is here to stay, and in the long run can be quite useful for organizations around the world. The problem again, and I think it's the same problem that we had with artificial intelligence when it came, is you only had tech people trying to innovate, and you didn't have psychologists who were trying to tell you or guide you to what innovation is useful for, or how to apply it, or how will people react to it.
Yeah, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Exactly. Absolutely. So I think same with ESG. I feel like it's a risk management, investor, financial strategy, and there's a lot of investors and financial analysts involved. I think this is the right time for psychologists to get involved as well. So one way of unfucking, I think, our field and the work is really start talking the lingo of everything. So don't just talk about the lingo of people and, psychometrics and talent and whatnot, but actually start talking about finance and economics and operations and logistics and supply chain. Because if we really want to be strategic as psychologists and we really want to make a difference organization-wide, not just sit on the HR floor and make business cases, then I think more and more of us need to be sort of strategic in nature and okay with talking to loads of different kinds of people in the organization. So I think that is the second challenge, is exploring how social psychology sits with ESG. And then once we do that, just find the realms of kindness, because they're not far off, the concepts of kindness in all these things, but we just need to establish them a little bit more.
Yeah, because in organizations, it's so fragmented and nobody's talking to anybody. So everyone's like, I'm in my little silo. I'm happy in my silo. I don't want to speak to those people over there, even though if we actually collaborate with each other, both of our jobs would be significantly easier. But instead, we'll just throw almost the problem backwards and forwards over the silo walls.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when people or when organizations hire people, they always use this competency, talent motivation matrix, which is great. Where's your talent? Where's your motivation? Blah, blah, blah. But once you hire them and you really want people to collaborate, I think that should be based on interest and that should be based on curiosity rather than being based on where is your talent and motivation. Because after a while, and these are people who are leaving, and we can see that people are leaving, is because they've saturated their interest and motivation at their organization. What they're now looking for is satisfying their curiosity. And nobody asks the question, are you interested in doing something different in this company, right? They might do development challenges with you, right? This is where you can develop into, or this is your interest and this is your motivation. But hey, I don't care about my interest and motivation. I just care about my curiosity. And that is climate analyses now. It's not psychology anymore. I want to do climate analyses, for example. Do I have the opportunity to do that? Can I raise my hand and say, here's my curiosity? Does that count for anything? So I think a lot of organizations are forgetting that they can do that with their current employees. And it's all about aligning. Yeah.
You're in that box. You're in that box.
Yeah. They will hire from outside, especially for roles like ESG or like climate or net zero, where literally they're hiring fresh graduates with no experience instead of asking people in their own organization, hey, are you curious about this? Are you interested? Feels weird to me.
I know it's easier to keep the people you've got and obviously figure out what they like to do, what they're interested in, and help them learn and develop than buy new people in. Yeah. I think it's almost that we're seen as specific cogs in the machine, and the HR cog couldn't possibly go and work in operations for a bit. But if you look at the old sort of retail management grad programs, you had to work everywhere. You had to learn all of the job, but it doesn't happen in the silos.
Yeah. It doesn't happen beyond your placement, which is sad, because what did you give them the skills for?
Yeah. No,
I think that's the excuse me. When I think of the trainee scheme I did within Skanska, a big construction development company. That was the thinking of the work within. So I worked within commercial development. I was then on site, managing projects, the finances, trades. I did a short project within HR. And the idea was the rotation to different functions, different countries even. It gave a broader perspective of how it all fits together as a large multinational, but broadened your thinking to then actually question, why do we do this like this? Would it not make sense to do that instead? So I really like that idea. And if you think about the next episode 4, we're talking about the Great Resignation. So actually having somewhere that says, I know we hired you to do this, Sakshi, but I have a feeling you'd probably be interested in this. I was talking to this person the other day. What do you reckon? Do you want to have a mission with them? And that difference of thinking, different skill backgrounds, training would actually solve more problems potentially.
Stop you getting bored as well.
Yes.
Exactly. And I think for a lot of organizations, this is very employee-led. So that's the general answer as well. You need to do it and you need to be forthcoming, and that's great. But that does not lead to a systemic change or how organizations deal with talent. So I think it needs to be a little bit more top-down as well, is like you said, the managers, the employers saying, I have recognized this in you. You would be great in this part, or like I was thinking about you or your interests, or you were sharing all these articles, maybe you can do this as well. I think it needs to be a little bit more top-down than just sort of employee-driven.
Well, they almost need the permission, for want of a better word, to be able to actually follow their curiosity, because I think with the way we are educated and parented to do what we're told and seek some authorization from some external authority figure, we go into organizations almost terrified to do anything apart from what's on the job description. We almost don't even know that we are allowed to be curious and allowed to ask questions.
Absolutely.
So that's interesting stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, you're so right there with that was so when you said actually, when James, you were mentioning about this podcast and the title, and literally the first thing that came to my mind was honestly, somebody needs to unfuck the whole cultural thing at workplace, because even though, I live and work in such a diverse place as London, there is so much more that companies can do about international hires and about international students. I think as an international student, the biggest issue that we have is getting hired. And so at that point, and I was in that position, you don't care about anything, the benefits, the perks, they're all maybe the last thing you're thinking about. You are in a position where whatever will work as long as they sponsor your visa. And I think that is fine and that makes sense. But once you get into it, I think a lot of organizations have taken a liberal approach with international students and being like, yeah, fine. They don't realize or recognize the immense transition it takes for a person, even in the way they're writing emails or even in the way they're addressing colleagues or the issues they have. These are not international students with white people problems. These are international students with international people problems. And I think that doesn't click for a lot of organizations. So you can have all your development programs and you can have all your induction programs or etiquettes training, as some companies do, but unless you recognize what their issues are or what their challenges are and how culturally they're rooted, I think we can speak about kindness, but it doesn't really matter then at that point, does it? Because you're not thinking cognitively that a person is different from you. And I think a lot of that is just, it's funny because in the recruitment process, we try to say nobody's different, everybody is the same, let's recruit equally. But I think once you're on board, here's your challenge is recognizing the differences and celebrating them, but then also understanding every person for every small thing that they do, right from how do they address you or write their emails or talk to clients or share things or not share things, is very culturally related. And I think there needs to be space for people to share that openly without feeling like we don't want to share about our culture or the history because it's embarrassing. So,
yeah, I've liked to find multicultural environments more exciting and stimulating. And the one about emails is I absolutely love, because you've got the very British way of writing emails. You've got your formal introduction and everything's
pleasantries,
nice long sentences. And then I'll talk to those colleagues or people we've coached and worked with who are perhaps more from a more direct culture, that the Brit might think, oh, that was quite rude what was said in that email. And literally that's just, a Dutch person will tell you exactly what they're thinking. The British person might be more flowery in how they bring this across. So I like the idea of embracing cultural differences and without trying to indoctrinate somebody to become something else, because that's, in effect, that's why you're hiring people.
Yeah.
You want diversity of thinking and
culture add,
yes. Can't all just be like, yeah.
And I think a lot of people in the job description say that we want a culture add or we want diversity. But I think when it actually comes to it, it is so challenging for people to say, you're writing emails quite differently from me. I would add a couple more sentences or I would word it differently. And I feel like every time you do that, it is great if these are technical points, but if these are just suggestions or the way you would do things,
preferences.
I think preferences people need to be very careful about before they tell someone what is the right way of doing things. Because every time you do it, you are telling somebody that here's a mold to adhere to, and there's less and less space for that diversity or how you would do it. So I think email is such a great example because it's so small, but it happens every day, 9 to 5 constantly, and you're dealing with it. And I think there are so many other examples of where I feel like organizations just don't realize why the other person is saying things that they're saying or doing things that they're doing. And a lot of them have to do more with culture than we realize, so it's not just a tick box exercise, tell us your ethnicity, but really if you're asking people about their ethnicity, think about what that means for the team and how people feel and work with each other.
Yeah. We do a thing with user manuals. We work a lot with neurodivergent humans, and these user manuals that we create helps sort of explain needs and preferences and how to get the best and worst, I suppose, out of people. But it would work in any, I think, team environment when people are just a bit too scared to ask questions and people think they should know everything instead of just being like following that curiosity and asking questions, how, and not just you adapting to the company, the company also and their teammates adapting to you as well?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's like the last 5 minutes of the interview shouldn't be for the candidate to ask questions. I think the whole interview should be for both parties to ask questions, and not just, here are last 5 minutes. Why don't you ask your questions? Because this is as much as about you as it is about us. No, actually, the ratio was probably 95-5. So it isn't about me. And I think the more and more employees leave for jobs, the more and more people are realizing that you can't afford to do that anymore.
No, it's like the power doesn't now sit with the person with the clipboard.
Oh, that's a nice analogy. I like that. But I think it's interesting. I'm very curious to see what happens next year, because this year, obviously, recruiters are struggling, and you either don't have enough applicants or you have too many. I wonder what the power dynamics of this space will be next year, when people have settled in, almost found the jobs that they were looking for, and the industry sort of feels a bit saturated. What will that look like?
Absolutely. So if we could give one tip for somebody from you to unfuck their workplace, what would it be?
Wow. I think it's easy to talk about what organizations need to do, or like strategy and stuff like that. So I will challenge myself and I will say what a person needs to do to unfuck maybe their company or whatever, their job. And it's basically something that I have tried to do. And it's getting over the feeling of gratefulness. I think for the longest time, I felt grateful for other people to take me on, or make sure I'm learning, or giving me the space, or giving me the sort of resources. Actually, nobody owes nobody anything at work. You owe everybody a general level of decency, kindness, honesty, respect, trust. But that is basic, right? So all these other things that you're getting at work or you're getting from your colleagues, stop feeling grateful about it. They are basics. You deserve them. You need them to do your job. And the sooner you recognize that, I think the sooner you don't just get a sense of ownership over your career, but you also get a sense of power and assertiveness over your career that I feel a lot of young people don't get. For a person like me, I have faced a lot of ageism in the industry, unfortunately. Where people are like, they will listen to you for 2 hours, and suddenly when they realize you're 24, they're like, oh, sorry, bye. Which is, I think, absolutely weird. And I think a lot of people have faced that. So I think feeling that you're grateful is okay, but get that sense of assertiveness back, place the power within your coat, and then look at your career. And then I think you will see where your next transition is, or where your next move is, quite clearly, than being clouded by those feelings of gratefulness. And it's quite an unusual one, I think, but I found it useful.
No, I love it. Brilliant. I'll be thinking about that all night now.
What started as a as a very I'm trying to think what the word is. Kindness as a strategy has opened the door to so many different things that clearly it's much more complex than it sounds.
Absolutely.
So, fascinating discussion.
As per usual.
Yes.
Good at making people think.
That's the job.
Thank you ever so much for coming along again.
I'm very happy to.
Yeah. Thanks, Sakshi.
Cool.
Thanks for climbing aboard for this episode. You can find further information in the show notes. If you want to hire or become a work pirate, get started at workpirates.com.